Docket number 2282CR117001, murder in the second degree. What say you? Is the defendant at the bar guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
It was electric. It really was.
Right now, it's just a celebration. Karen Read is finally free.
The whole reason we're here is to fight for Johnny. Just remember the man that he was.
Thank you for joining us for this hour-long special, the Karen Read trial after the verdict. I'm Carrie Kavanaugh. It was a murder trial that captivated the nation not once, but twice over the last 3 years. It was after a night of drinking. Karen Read's accused of hitting her police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, leaving him to die in a blizzard on the lawn of a Canton home. That first trial ended with a hung jury. The retrial spanning 8 weeks of testimony and more than 3 days of deliberation. It brought this case to an end. Verdicts on 3 charges. And the next 60 minutes will bring you reaction, one-on-one interviews on both sides, and talk about what's next for the people involved. First, a closer look at what the jury decided on each count. Second-degree murder, not guilty. Vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated, not guilty. Leaving the scene of a collision resulting in death, not guilty. Read was found guilty of a lesser-included charge, operating under the influence. That verdict leaving Karen Read a free woman and John O'Keefe's family heartbroken. We don't want to forget that this is what the trial was ultimately about. The Boston police officer died in 2022. His loved ones tell Boston 25 he always put his family first. We'll sit down with his family to hear how they remember John in a moment. But now, let's look back on that culminating day at Norfolk County Superior Court. Boston 25 investigative reporter Ted Daniel followed this case from the very beginning and interviewed Read one-on-one before her retrial. Ted shows us what happened inside and outside court when that verdict came down.
Instead of going out of the back of the courthouse in handcuffs, Karen Read floated through the front door to a thunderous ovation. Read spoke briefly on the steps as the cheering continued.
I just want to say 2 things. Number 1 is I could not be standing here without these amazing supporters who have supported me and my team financially and, more importantly, emotionally for almost 4 years. And the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have and my team. Thank you.
Docket number 2282CR117001, murder in the second degree. What say you? Is the defendant at the bar guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Read hugged her lawyers and wiped tears as the reality set in.
002. What say you? Is the defendant at the bar not guilty or guilty?
Not guilty.
Leaving the scene after accident resulting in death, the defendant not guilty or guilty?
Not guilty.
So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all?
The jury found Read not guilty of all charges except for operating under the influence. She was immediately sentenced to 1 year of probation. The Free Karen Read slogan, now a reality. Karen Read is free.
We thank everybody for their support from the heart. We love you all.
I'm Ted Daniel, Boston 25 News.
Ted will be back with more reaction to that verdict and portions of his one-on-one with Karen Read a little later in our special. But first, more about the victim in this case, John O'Keefe. Boston 25 News reporter Daniel Coates spoke with John's cousin, a former employee here at Boston 25 News, in an emotional conversation about the O'Keefe's family's disappointment with this verdict.
The only way that we would have found some kind of peace in this would have been a guilty verdict.
John O'Keefe's cousin, Vanessa Rizzitano, and her family heard the opposite last week.
All right.
Karen Read acquitted of second-degree murder and manslaughter charges connected to O'Keefe's death, a retrial that captivated the nation.
I felt like I didn't even have strength in my body to still stand.
Rizzitano watched on the computer in her kitchen. Her initial sobs, though, quickly turned to anger. Cheers erupting from the crowd outside, seeping into the courtroom and through her laptop speakers.
That made me sick to my stomach. While it's other people's celebration, it literally was like the worst day of our lives.
Even more enraged by Karen's comments moments later.
No one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have.
Hearing those words come out of her mouth literally was sickening. No. The prosecution, his family, his loved ones, including myself, we're the ones that fought the hardest for Johnny. Not you.
Rizzitano thought of her cousin Johnny like a big brother. She lived with him as a young child and later in Canton as a young adult out of college. Now she's deleted her social media and stays off the internet in the wake of the trial, claiming her family's at the receiving end of unbearable harassment online.
They think that the loss of my cousin and a grieving family, they find that entertaining, and I think that's so sick. He would be ashamed knowing how our family's getting treated.
Still carrying the memory of her cousin every day, she and her family have noticed John's spirits present now more than ever.
Yeah, it's just signs that he is with us.
Daniel Coates for your local station, Boston 25 News.
Rizzitano says the family's top priority is to make sure O'Keefe's legacy lives on. Karen Read's acquittal, not the outcome prosecutors had worked for either. Boston 25 reached out to the Norfolk DA, Michael Morrissey, multiple times following the verdict. We received a 4-word statement saying, quote, "The jury has spoken." After the mistrial last year, DA Morrissey went outside his office and hired a special prosecutor, Hank Brennan. Days after the jury acquitted Read of murder and manslaughter this time around, Brennan broke his silence with a statement of his own. He told Boston 25 he's disappointed with the verdict. Brennan warned about witness intimidation, saying, quote, "The campaign of intimidation and abuse that has been waged, funded, and promoted in public and on social media is the antithesis of justice. If this type of conduct becomes commonplace, it will threaten the integrity of our judicial system, affecting both victims and the criminally accused." Brennan also sent condolences to O'Keefe's family, saying he hopes they can find peace and closure. But his statement did not sit well with the defense. Read's attorney, Alan Jackson, releasing a scorching response. Investigative reporter Ted Daniel is back to break down Jackson's comments for prosecutors.
In a targeted statement, Alan Jackson takes aim right at Hank Brennan and Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey. Let's get right to it. Jackson says, quote, "The jury has spoken, but Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, in an egregious breach of prosecutorial ethics, has tried to publicly shame and discredit that very jury. For him to attempt to supplant his personal views of the jury is a desperate attempt to save face in the wake of a unanimous rejection of the prosecution's case." Jackson goes on to say, quote, "The Commonwealth's defamatory public comments ring hollow to the very constituents they are supposed to serve. It is now crystal clear that disgraced DA Michael Morrissey has no interest in actually seeking justice for John O'Keefe by identifying and prosecuting the real killer or killers." Jackson's full 2-page statement is on our website, boston25news.com. I'm Ted Daniel for your local station, Boston 25 News.
To the jury now. After spending weeks in the selection process, 18 people formed the jury panel and sat through every moment of testimony. But only 12 of those jurors actually deliberated the case, 7 women and 5 men. Some of those jurors have spoken out about what the experience was like. One juror says after hearing all the evidence and testimony, he believes Karen Read was innocent. Here's what the man known as Juror 4 told TMZ.
There was holes in the case that left for reasonable doubt. I think they could have checked some boxes or done some things differently. But do I know that they were corrupt? Absolutely not. I don't know that there was any corruption going on. But do I know that there wasn't enough proof or evidence secured by the police to convict Karen Read? Absolutely not. There was not.
Bottom line, he says the jury didn't buy the prosecution's case that Read's SUV hit O'Keefe. He also says the first verdict slip that jurors called back and was never read in court is identical to the second slip. He says they pulled it back for additional discussion on the OUI charge. A second juror in the case says the testimony he heard changed her mind about Read's involvement in the death of John O'Keefe. But when she spoke with us, her first words were to the O'Keefe family. Boston 25's Ryan Breslin brought us live reports every morning from the courthouse, and he has juror number 11's interview.
I want to come out to let them know that we feel for them.
Paula Prado was juror number 11 in Karen Read's second trial. She spoke with Boston 25's April Baker less than 48 hours after finding Read not guilty in the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe.
I'm a mother, and it broke my heart to see the family leaving the courthouse on that day. But it wasn't her fault, and I hope they find who did it.
Prado says as she listened to both sides, her opinion began to shift.
First it started, I thought maybe manslaughter, but after the weeks passed by and the witnesses, and I just couldn't make her guilty.
Read's SUV and that broken taillight a deciding factor for Prado.
We couldn't make the taillight, the damage on the taillight, the original taillight, compatible with the injuries on his body.
She says the jury felt there were too many holes in the prosecution's case, but she doesn't buy there was an effort to frame Read.
I'm not going to say it's a cover-up, but it was a sloppy effort.
And while she's confident Read was not involved in O'Keefe's death, she hopes his family keeps fighting for answers.
I just hope they find justice.
Prado has received some backlash on social media after speaking with reporters. Boston 25 has reached out to other jurors from the trial. At least one of them told us that they would rather put this case behind them, and after seeing the backlash, they would rather not have their name out there. Reporting in Dedham, I'm Ryan Breslin for your local station, Boston 25 News.
And as you heard one of the jurors say, they felt Mass State Police could have done a better job investigating the Karen Read case. The lead investigator, State Trooper Michael Proctor, lost his job for conduct revealed in the first trial. Boston 25 investigative reporter Ted Daniel sat down one-on-one with Karen Read before the second trial and asked her about that. She was more than willing to talk about Proctor and others.
What troubles me is how evil people are.
We covered a lot of ground with Karen Read, including those who want her in prison. The Norfolk DA, state police working for the DA, and specifically Trooper Michael Proctor. The detective zeroed in on Read within hours of John O'Keefe's death. Proctor has testified that's where the evidence, including Read's cracked taillight, took him.
Yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though.
During Read's first trial, Proctor's personal feelings for Read were exposed in his personal text messages. What was it like to be there in court and listen to all those texts?
Proctor was just letting the public know what I've known about Michael Proctor, who he really is. Nothing Michael Proctor texted and admitted out loud in court about me would ever offend me.
Your figures of speech include the following. She's a bitch.
Objection.
Is that right?
Yes.
You spent hours having him read those out loud. I'm sure that was done by design.
It was. Everything that we did in that cross-examination of Michael Proctor was done by design.
There was an effort to indict Read on new witness intimidation charges last March. It failed. Read says even people around her were under scrutiny.
Our drivers have been approached by the state police, had very close friends, had their cell phone records subpoenaed for an indictment that never happened.
Have you ever been followed?
I don't know. My eyes are akimbo all the time. I look at law enforcement differently, more warily.
How do you know you're being tracked?
I know from affidavits from the state police at the Norfolk DA's office. They knew what flight I was on, they knew when I landed, they knew when I came back, and it's disturbing. It's invasive, and it's desperate.
Certainly unusual for a defendant in a murder trial to sit down for an interview before the trial. She told Ted at the time she knows her case inside and out and felt she had nothing to lose. The district attorney declined Ted's request for an interview. State police responded to criticism about their investigation. They released a statement that reads in part the following. The Massachusetts State Police extends its condolences to the loved ones of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. The events of the last 3 years have challenged our department thoroughly to review our actions and take concrete steps to deliver advanced investigative training, ensure appropriate oversight, and enhance accountability. Colonel Jeffrey Noble added they're focusing on maintaining public trust. After the verdict, Michael Proctor spoke exclusively to ABC's 2020 in a special episode. Proctor did not testify in the retrial. Proctor told 2020 the investigation points to one person.
You had the one shoe found at the scene, taillight pieces at the scene, the one shoe at the hospital, her statements. Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? We were very confident. We knew that what had transpired.
Which was?
Karen Read backed her Lexus vehicle into John O'Keefe.
Proctor came under fire for the series of disparaging text messages he sent about Read, which he read aloud in court while testifying at her first trial. The State Police Trial Board found Proctor guilty of 2 charges: unsatisfactory performance and alcoholic beverages. 2 other families became local household names during this trial: the Alberts and the McCabe's. Their reaction to the verdict ahead. And Canton in the crosshairs of this case. How people in the town feel now that it's finally over. Plus, Ted Daniel is back sitting down with Karen Read's parents. They share what the trial has been like for their family. And if you missed Ted's one-on-one interview with Karen Read after the Super Bowl, you can see that right now on our website and the unedited conversation on the Boston 25 YouTube page. Welcome back to our Boston 25 hour-long special, the Karen Read case after the verdict. As we've reported, John O'Keefe was found dead outside the home of a fellow police officer, Brian Albert. Albert's sister-in-law, Jen McCabe, was with Karen Read when they found O'Keefe's body. After the jury reached a verdict, the McCabes and the Alberts released the following statement. It says, quote, "Today our hearts are with John and the entire O'Keefe family. They have suffered through so much and deserved better from our justice system. While we may have more to say in the future, today we mourn with John's family and lament the cruel reality that this prosecution was infected by lies and conspiracy theories spread by Karen Read, her defense team, and some in the media. The result is a devastating miscarriage of justice." The Canton Select Board also releasing a statement about the Karen Read verdict. It says in part, quote, "This case has been the subject of intense public interest, scrutiny, and speculation for 3 years. Our community has been deeply affected. Today's outcome may bring a sense of relief to some and continue to raise questions for others. We encourage members of the community to move forward together, treating one another with respect through civil, constructive dialogue."
I'm Eli Morillo in Canton. This town has been the center of the Karen Read case. Some say they are glad it's finally over, but some argue that it's caused division, not only with residents, but with local businesses.
So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all?
Jurors found Karen Read not guilty of second-degree murder in the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend John O'Keefe, a resident of Canton. Read was found guilty of a lesser charge of drunk driving after 4 days of deliberations. Read now faces 1 year of probation. Canton residents have mixed emotions about the verdict.
I work in Canton, and seeing the mixed from the police and the businesses putting signs in the area. They said if you're not with the police, don't come into our business. So I don't feel that way.
It's difficult because obviously living in the town, there's a lot of people that are divided about it. So it kind of sucks to see, but I guess I'm glad it's over and just praying for the family because they're not happy with the decision.
You got someone that's passed away, and you got someone that's guilty of a crime. And there's your division right there.
In Canton, I'm Eli Morillo for your local station, Boston 25 News.
Karen Read's parents gave 25 Investigates reporter Ted Daniel their first sit-down interview the day after the verdict. They said the jury's decision left them feeling like they were floating.
We spoke to Bill and Janet Read at their Dighton home, where Karen Read has also been living. They had just returned from Boston Seaport, where they spent the night with their daughter and her team, celebrating until 2 a.m.
Alan Jackson came up to me moments before that jury came in, and he squeezed my back and he said, looked at my wife and he said, guys, we got this.
Bill and Janet Reed, 24 hours after the verdict heard across the country.
I knew then I only had to hear one not guilty, and I knew it was going to be okay. And I grabbed Bill and Nathan, they were sitting on the side of me, just to hold them, and their arms were both shaking.
Bill Reed says the cheers outside the courthouse did not go unnoticed.
When they erupted, it made me proud to be an American. You know, that people were behind us, and when it erupted and filtered through that courtroom.
Janet Reed tells me she hopes her daughter is able to get time away from Massachusetts. She says the 1-year probation she received for her drunk driving conviction does not prevent her from leaving the state.
I mean, it has to be the most expensive DUI conviction in the history of prosecutions, right?
I can't think of one that's even close.
Defense attorney and law tuber Peter Tragos says the O'Keefe family can still pursue their wrongful death lawsuit against Reed in civil court. He believes the civil case would be stronger had Reed been convicted of murder.
If they would have got this conviction, it's a slam dunk case, and they're just trying to prove how much. What is it worth? What is John O'Keefe's life worth? They would have just been arguing about damages if this would have been a guilty verdict.
The O'Keefe family has a much different view of what happened. They believe Karen Reed got away with murder. Reed herself was still with members of her legal team in Boston when we spoke with her parents. I'm Ted Daniel for your local station, Boston 25 News.
Where will Karen Reed pop up next? And how did state police respond to the verdict? Boston 25 investigative reporter Ted Daniel sits down with me for his take when our special After the Verdict returns. The Karen Reed case has been a back-and-forth drama that has spanned years and 2 trials. From the investigation to the verdict, 25 Investigates Ted Daniel has tracked every development. Ted joins us now to talk about the aftermath of this verdict and where we go from here. Let's start with the main focal point of this trial, Karen Reed. We haven't seen much of her since the verdict. Do you know what she's up to now?
Well, I know she's taking some time with her family. They were invited away for the 4th of July, and I know her mom and dad were planning to go on this little vacation with her with friends. And I think some of this is just unwinding Carrie, and I also think she's plotting what is next. She's planning and talking with people who may not even be in Massachusetts, who may be on the West Coast, about, you know, what her future is and where we will see her. I mean, we're going to see her some way, whether it be in some sort of People magazine cover or some sort of documentary or book. I know that she has a story to tell, and I have a feeling that the reason why we didn't hear a lot from her on the courthouse steps is she might be saving that, because she certainly has a story to tell.
She does indeed, and does need, I would imagine, after 2 murder trials, some much needed time off. The jurors who we've heard from, they've come forward. We don't hear any regrets or a lot of confidence in the decision they reached.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard over and over again from the jurors who've spoken is they all felt comfortable with their decision. And listening to the most recent person who came out, the foreman who spoke to Today's Show, he said, you know, listen, we really went through this. We went in through this and we allowed everyone to voice their opinion. I don't think you got that, Carrie, with the first trial. I think there was more dissension in that deliberation room compared to this time around. And they seem like they are on this united front, that they felt like that the evidence was not there. There was just too much reasonable doubt. And the foreman essentially said, I don't believe a collision happened.
Well, speaking of the differences between first and second trial, the only charge Karen Reed was convicted of wasn't even an option in that first trial, the OUI. How did that change this time around? You
know, Alan Jackson and David Yannetti, everything they do is strategic. And I believe that probably was strategic because there was evidence that she had been drinking that night. She did admit that she had been drinking that night, and that gave the jury something to convict her of.
Something that they felt comfortable going with. Yeah. Let's talk about the other side, the prosecution. Norfolk County District Attorney Michael Morrissey. What have we heard from him so far?
Yeah, he just gave that sort of quick 1-sentence statement that the jury has spoken, and that sort of surprised me. And I've seen some reporting out there where people say, hey, he really should come out and address the media. I mean, perception is reality, and whether you think the police did a great job or a trash, horrible job, you know, there's a feeling out there amongst a lot of people that this investigation did not go well, that, you know, there were issues with his, you know, with the investigation that was run by his office, and there's been absolute silence on that, and it just seems so weird that an elected official who's got the eyes of the world on him, you would hope that he would give the answers that people want to hear. There's still a lot of questions from people out here about how this all transpired.
And it was his office's decision to try her twice and to do so very quickly after the first trial. They brought in Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan. He released a statement after this. As he said in closing arguments, he believed the evidence led to one person, Karen Read.
He said, hey, I looked at this case. The police looked at this case. The FBI looked at this case. And, you know, according to him, the only conclusion that he reached was that Karen Read was culpable for John O'Keefe's murder. So, I mean, I think that's probably what you know, this is a guy who spent months trying to put her in prison. He's not going to change, you know, his view just because the jury did not agree with his arguments.
The police who investigated this, Mass State Police detectives assigned to the DA's office, MSP, they put out a statement after this trial.
Yeah, and I found that the state police sort of read the room with that statement, that they kind of understood that they were under this heavy scrutiny, and I thought they addressed some of those issues. The fact that they said they're going to start looking at some of their investigative techniques, and I thought that was, you know, you have a new colonel now who's, you know, been on the job now for several months, but that seemed to give me some confidence that maybe they do understand that. I mean, hey, one of their guys got fired over this case, right? Mm-hmm. And became a national spectacle, Michael Proctor. And I thought the state police statement hit the right tone.
So, as you're saying, perhaps Karen Read has some stuff in the works. We know of at least 2 documentaries coming. This case may be over with the jury, but it's going to be talked about for years to come.
I think this case gets studied in schools. I think that it's such an interesting view, and it shows you when you have an amazing defense team, you know, which is very expensive, that you can get an amazing defense, and that's exactly what happened here. And you had a very vigorous prosecution. They did not lay down. They came at her with everything they had, especially in that second trial. Hank Brennan, with all the motions he filed and trying to limiting evidence and limited who could say what. You know, it's not like you could say that the prosecution did not make every attempt to try to convict her, and that just did not happen, Carrie.
A lot of spectacle around this. A lot of interest continues in this case. You've been on it since the beginning. Investigative reporter Ted Daniel, thank you for this insight.
Thanks, Carrie.
Ahead on our After the Verdict special, while Read's criminal case is behind her, her legal issues are not. We'll break down the civil suit she's facing, along with the bars she visited the night John O'Keefe died. Our Karen Read special continues now with a look at the legal teams involved. Peter Ellikin is a legal analyst who followed the case for us and weighed in on it throughout the trial. He praised both of the teams of attorneys, but specifically prosecutor Hank Brennan.
Keep in mind, if I was to say anything to somebody who thinks that she's guilty and they feel terrible right now, keep in mind that the way criminal trials are, you're not found innocent. All that was found was that they did not have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that was the big problem with this case for the prosecution. Hank Brennan did a wonderful job of prosecuting, did everything under the sun I could think of doing. So this is not a knock like, oh, well, you lost. I guess you didn't do a good job. He did a wonderful job, but I think there was just too much reasonable doubt. So keep in mind for the family, I would say that and it's kind of a problem for whenever you're charged with a crime, you're never found innocent. So there's always, for certain people, there's always going to be a stigma on them for whoever gets charged with whatever crime. I'm talking about other people now. But because you're never found innocent. It's just, hey, they couldn't prove it.
John O'Keefe's family is continuing their legal fight. Boston 25's Cale Thompson explains the steps ahead in civil court.
Reed is not out of legal trouble, at least not yet. The O'Keefe family is suing her for wrongful death in Plymouth County Court. Their lawsuit blames Reed for O'Keefe's death and blames two bars for over-serving Reed that night. Court paperwork shows the family is seeking at least $50,000, but a jury could award more if they find in the O'Keefe family's favor. The burden of proof in a civil case is lower than in a criminal trial. The O'Keefe family would not have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, only that their allegations are more than likely to be true. For context tonight, that is what happened to O.J. Simpson almost 30 years ago when a criminal court jury acquitted him of murder in 1995, but a civil court jury found him liable for wrongful death and ordered him to pay more than $33 million in damages.
Next on After the Verdict, we're sitting down with internet legal sensation Peter Tragos from Lawyer You Know. He shares with our Ted Daniel why he thinks the case ended the way it did and what surprised him in the days after the verdict. Tens of thousands of you have watched our weekly retrial recaps on our Boston 25 YouTube channel with Ted Daniel and Peter Tragos from Lawyer You Know. They sat down after the verdict came down and shared their reactions to the verdict and the aftermath.
Not guilty on all charges except for drunk driving, and she was given a 1-year probation for that. She walked out of the courthouse free. What were your thoughts when that came down?
Yeah, based on the jury questions, it wasn't really a surprise. That's where I thought they were going, which makes me think they were a logical jury working through all of the individual charges and lesser includeds the way that they should. Is there enough evidence to prove this? They didn't just say not guilty down the line. They didn't just say guilty down the line. It wasn't a simple split baby. I think they methodically worked through it, probably took multiple votes, and ended up coming up with the fact that they felt like there was enough evidence to convict Karen Reed of OUI, but nothing else, which points to probably they didn't think there was a collision and they don't think she caused the death of John O'Keefe.
Right. And that's my analysis of the collision portion of it, that they didn't get to collision, that they did not think a collision occurred because the drunk driving charge is sort of separate from that. And that was the evidence for that was her statements and the blood testing. So it appears that they said, no, we don't believe there's enough evidence here to convict her that she hit John O'Keefe.
And I think it helped the fact that the jury was really looking at this and trying to determine, was she guilty? So much so that they found her guilty on one of the charges. It's not like they were, a free Karen Reed movement and they were going to go in there and make sure nothing happened to Karen Reed. That's just not what this jury was doing.
Yeah. And the fact that they, spent the amount of time that they did, I'm thinking about 17 hours in there deliberating away. It shows that there were probably some people on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, I think at the very least, it could have been people on the other side of the fence, or it could have been people that wanted to vote not guilty on OUI that were ended up getting flipped to guilty in the 20 so odd hours that they were deliberating. So, we don't really know which way it was, but it was not full agreement from the jump. I think we can probably understand that or infer that from the jury's actions and their questions. But eventually they were able to come to an agreement on not just one, not just two, not even just 3 charges, but 3 main charges and multiple lesser includeds.
Do you think that someone asked me this morning and I really, felt like I didn't give a great answer. Do you think the movement or all the publicity surrounding this case, all the questions surrounding this case, do you think the jury, that was a factor in any of their decision making?
I don't know if it was, but what I will say is if it was, it would be really hard to argue against it as the Commonwealth with the type of questions and evidence they brought out. They elicited questions about, well, the public made you come out and tell this. The public made you come forward. The public made you want to get involved in this trial.
Yeah,
the
lucky.
public is forcing you to help Karen Reed. Like Hank Brennan was asking those types of questions. So if the jury felt some type of way about the public pressure, Hank Brennan's the one that brought it out on the record in evidence during trial.
So she's done in terms of the criminal charges, the law protects her, the Constitution protects her from ever having to face these again, right?
Yeah, no double jeopardy. She is acquitted. It's over. The only thing that could potentially, I always leave a caveat. I'm a lawyer, right? It depends. If some juror came out and said, I'm free Karen Read, I lied to get on this jury, I bullied the jury to vote not guilty, haha, we won. There are some protections against that, obviously, but notwithstanding something that extreme, she's done. She can go out on the courthouse steps and say, I did it, haha. I wouldn't recommend that, obviously, and I don't think she would ever do that. I don't think that's the case here. But we remember O.J. Simpson and how people felt about that. You cannot be prosecuted again, even if the Ring video camera does show up and the Lexus does back into John O'Keefe. They cannot retry her, even with new evidence like that.
Well, we left our microphone on the podium after Karen Read spoke in hopes that Hank Brennan would come out, or Adam Lally, or even the DA. I've seen in big high-profile cases that the DA is the one, Michael Morrissey in this case, would come out and say, hey, either we respect the jury's decision, or, you know, obviously I think he would say that in his opinion, the jury got it wrong. We didn't see that. Should they have come out and said something?
Well, I actually don't blame Hank Brennan. He hasn't made a ton of public comments. And what I will say, because I've disagreed with a lot of things Hank Brennan has done throughout this trial, certain angles that he took and ways he made arguments or asked questions, but he did the right thing, asking for just the standard OUI punishment for Karen Read, didn't argue for jail time, didn't drag this out another week, didn't make everybody show up for court wondering, are they going to push for jail time? What is Cannoni going to do? So he did the right thing. He argued his hardest as a lawyer. When you lose like a gentleman, which I think he did. But Michael Morrissey's been out there making public statements, saying certain things the jury did not agree with. He's an elected official. I think it would have been right for him to come out and say, we lost. This is how we lost, why we lost. We think we did the right thing. We're going to move on, whatever it may have been. But I think it would have been appropriate for him to come out and comment. I'm not surprised that he didn't.
After the break, Ted and Peter are back to look at what comes next in this case. What do they think will be Karen Read's next move as she finds life after the verdict? Our special continues after this. We're back with more of our breakdown of the Karen Read case after the verdict with our Ted Daniel and Peter Tragos from Lawyer You Know. Next, they're tackling the cost of this case and what's next for Karen Read, from the civil case to how she handles her notoriety moving forward.
I mean, it has to be the most expensive DUI conviction in the history of prosecutions, right?
I can't think of one that's even close.
I mean, the amount of money that law enforcement has spent on this case, and it really was personal for everyone involved. You know that the police and the prosecutors, they did not like Karen Read. They did not like her lawyers. And I think that, you know, it became this absolute battle. And now we have an outcome. And so she's got bills to pay, big bills. Do you anticipate that's the next focus? I imagine we're going to hear from her in some way, whether it's a book or whether it's documentary or something that and I think that might have been some of the reason why she did not stay on the podium and answer a ton of questions. She has a story to tell. She has a story to tell, and I'll be interested to see who gets to tell it.
Yeah, it's interesting. What route will they go, right? Will they go normal media? Will they go new age media? Will they go on podcasts? Will they do a TV show, a Netflix series, documentary, book, whatever it may be? And whatever she wants to do, she's entitled to do it. Her life has been affected in a crazy way. Just because you're acquitted doesn't mean everything goes back to normal. Doesn't mean everybody in the world believes that you're innocent and you actually didn't do this. There will still be people that call her a killer and say she did it. She's still going to be negatively affected. She has been negatively affected, especially financially. I think that based on the interviews that happened during/after trial number one, we can expect something's coming and something is going to happen. And maybe it's been planned throughout. I don't know. But I would expect something. I think she's entitled to it. And whatever they decide, I hope they do it the right way.
Yeah, the way it used to work back before, when it was just sort of broadcast owning these things, there used to be car services. The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS This Morning, they'd send cars. and to take you to New York and have a hotel room ready for you. And it's like whoever is the person chooses to go with, you get in that car, and the other ones just eat the cost if that doesn't happen. That did not happen. I know her team was staying in Boston's Seaport District, and they all went out. I think we got some video of her last night of them going to a restaurant and celebrating. And now it's her story to tell, and I am so curious how she plans to do it. There is a Netflix documentary that's coming out. I'm not sure how much involvement she's going to have in that, but I think that will kind of take us through the second trial and through the verdict, which, some of the previous stuff took us up to the mistrial. She's got the civil case. The family of John O'Keefe has filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and I'm assuming that's going to jam her up for years.
It could. It all depends on what's going to happen. There could be some kind of resolution where the insurance company pays some money to get it over with. She could fight it all the way, take it to trial. Civil is very different than criminal. From my perspective, if it was me, I'd talk to my insurance company, say, offer up to the policy. I don't want to deal with this. Whatever you guys will pay, fine. I don't want to pay any money out of my pocket, and I don't want to make any admissions. And if they can get it resolved, maybe they can. And John O'Keefe's family can say, haha, look, she paid for this wrongful death lawsuit. Maybe they want justice in civil court. They want to push it. They're not going to accept anything less than everything she has. So, the civil court is hard to kind of guess how it's going to play out because so few of those cases go to trial. And standing on business and standing on principle, at some point, you want to get your life back. You want to move on. So what does she care if her insurance company makes a payment to the O'Keefe family? But that's easy for me to say. I'm not in her shoes. So just looking at it like a lawyer, I wouldn't be surprised if that got resolved one way or the other.
But if there's not an umbrella policy, would insurance company even be involved?
I mean, if there's a car insurance, I don't know what her car insurance is.
Yeah.
Let's say she has a 250 policy on her car. That would be involved if they say it's wrongful death because of a car accident. Now, just because Karen Read won in the criminal trial doesn't mean that she's automatically going to win in the civil trial. It's a different burden. So the O'Keefes can still try to prove John O'Keefe was killed because of the actions of Karen Read in her car, therefore getting the car insurance to attach. If she has an umbrella on top of that, she may be able to pierce into that umbrella. It depends on what the policy language is. If she has no umbrella, they can sue her personally. If she has no car insurance, they can sue her personally and get a judgment, and she would owe them whatever money a jury gives her in a civil trial.
We thank Peter Tragos from Lawyer You Know for sitting down with us each week to break down the case. Watch Ted and Peter's full conversation on our Boston 25 YouTube page. Jen! They're the sights and sounds of this trial, the key moments inside and outside the courtroom that we won't soon forget. A look back from the major players in this case in their own words when our special After the Verdict returns. Welcome back to our Boston 25 special, the Karen Read case After the Verdict. It takes a big team to bring you a murder case of this magnitude over 3 years. Photojournalist Erling Moe worked on our coverage nearly every day of both trials. He shares some of the memorable moments before we go.
I hear Karen Read yell, "Peg, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Peg, is he dead?"
Jen! She's screaming that John didn't come home. She started saying, could I have hit him? Did I hit him?
I won't ever forget those statements. I hit him. I hit him.
You discover something in that area?
It's a cocktail glass.
To carry them from Fairview to the police department.
In this particular case, we utilized the Stop and Shop Act.
Do you think it shows integrity?
That text message does not show integrity.
Have you ever inflated your qualifications in a court?
No, I have not.
But even a 2-mile-an-hour impact redirects me back and causes me to rotate.
So he tried to dress identically to John, but didn't do anything else to mimic what the Commonwealth is accusing me of.
So he said my name correctly. He said Dever, and
that's my mistake. Let's see. You want me to repeat the question so I get that right?
Mr. Jackson, let's go ahead and answer, please.
Is that consistent with the black Lexus SUV that you saw at the Read residence?
That was the black Lexus. That was not the taillight.
The defense moves strongly, vigorously for a mistrial.
Did you see a 6'1", 216-pound man lying on that lawn?
No. I feel like I've answered it the best I can, Your Honor.
Okay, next question.
You don't like that question? So you didn't care to know anything about the car, the data in the car, because you had already formed your opinion?
It did not hit him, so it was not relevant to my opinion.
This is a story we have covered extensively since the beginning, and surely more will unfold in the months to come. So stay with Boston 25 News on air and online for continuing coverage. That does it for this Boston 25 News special, the Karen Read case after the verdict. I'm Carrie Kavanaugh. From all of us here at Boston 25 News, thank you so much for watching this. Stay safe and be well.